It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
After a crazy year with COVID, we finally can say that we have March Madness back. On this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, we give you anything and everything March Madness related, getting you set for the NCAA tournament. But before we begin, we would like to thank our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Big thanks, as always, to Dave Johnson in our music by Productions by Quet. All right, it's time for another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. It comes your way right now.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Welcoming you to another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. As always, I am your host, Josh Kirby. Our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Once again, a big thanks to all of our sponsors for doing what they do best here on the Kirby on Sports Podcast. We greatly appreciate all the support. Big thanks to Dave Johnson and Productions by Quet as well. It's finally back, folks. After 1 year, March Madness is back. It's just crazy to think that a global pandemic shut down the March Madness NCAA tournament just about a little over a year ago. But we're able to get it back. And I'm going to start off this show not really by discussing the teams and the matchups and stuff, because we have my good friend Alex Flum from WDVM joining us in just a little while to talk about all the matchups and stuff. He covers Maryland, so we'll discuss Maryland and so on and so forth as well. But I mean, first and foremost, with this pandemic, we have seen a lot of these teams struggle with COVID. You know, some players have tested positive. Some members of the organization in certain teams have tested positive. One team, for example, we'll touch on this more later, but the UVA Cavaliers. The UVA Cavaliers, the most recent team to win the national championship, they're getting... There was a chance that they might not even be in this situation where they might have had to forfeit their spot in the tournament. But they are the number 4 seed as of right now in the west side of the bracket. So, I mean, I think there have been some exceptions made on scheduling, so Virginia can come back and be together and get ready for this game as a team, obviously, because that's what you need. But still, in my mind, something like that, I feel like it's gonna change your mindset. And who knows? Because I don't think these teams are telling the media and other sources who has COVID. So if that's the case, you might have your star player that's out with COVID, because if I heard this correctly, the person or people closely associated with the person or player who had COVID is out for the first 2 rounds. So if that's your star player, obviously they're not going to announce this, but if that's your star player, your mindset's changed to how are we going to fill this void, and are we going to be able to produce a successful team to move us forward in the tournament. So Virginia's first matchup is with number 13 ranked Ohio. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Once again, we'll get into that more later, but the tournament as a whole, I feel like they're going to be very, very, very strict with COVID. I really hope that this tournament goes COVID free. Because if there was a chance that anybody tested positive for COVID or contact tracing, whatever the case may be, I feel like that's just going to screw up the entire tournament. Because in my opinion, looking at this bracket and looking at the dates that these teams are slated to play, I'm not so sure if there's any cushion room for something of this nature, like a positive COVID test, to happen during the tournament. It's a full tournament. It's the round of 64 down to 32 to 18 to whatever, the standard tournament format. And I don't think you're going to have any cushion room. So my thing is, first off, are the teams going to implement you're either practicing, you're playing your game, or you are in your hotel room just doing nothing? Because I feel like the teams have to set that protocol first. If protocol gets broken, first and foremost, I feel like there will be heavy fines since this is the NCAA tournament. Don't get me wrong now, because I feel like there's a lot of revenue that is going on because this tournament did not happen last year. So my thoughts on this, revenue will be generated by this some way, shape, or form, obviously with TV viewership and stuff. But my thing about this is, if there is a positive COVID case, then what happens? Do they back the national championship up to get all these games played? Do they have to forfeit and the other team moves on? I mean, my thoughts here, I feel like it's going to be very interesting to see what happens if somebody tests positive for COVID. But I feel like this starts with the teams. They need to be disciplined in either they're practicing, they're playing a game, or they're in their hotel rooms or wherever they are staying, self-isolating, getting ready for the next game. So, I mean, that's my take to start things off here about this tournament and COVID, the whole situation. I mean, I feel like obviously this tournament can be held safely. It 100% can. But I feel like it's going to come down to if anybody breaks protocol. I mean, even if there isn't a positive COVID case or anything, but a team or certain players were to break protocol, I feel like the NCAA would heavily fine that team. And I feel like there's a chance that the team or teams, if this were to happen, once again, I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying hypothetically, if it were to happen, I would imagine that the NCAA would disqualify them from competition so they could not win a national championship. So just some thoughts there to start this podcast off. Once again, it's March Madness here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. We have a lot to get to here. We are just getting started. It's going to be a great episode. Once again, I will be joined by Alex Flum of WDVM to break down anything and everything March Madness related. But once again, that was just my segment on COVID, the whole situation with the tournament, and everything. I mean, this is obviously going to get done one way or another, but I feel like if it gets too severe and some people test positive for COVID and you can't make up games or anything, then unfortunately, I feel like, last resort, they'll have to cancel this tournament. But let's just hope it does not come to that, because sports have been our refuge through this whole pandemic. And, going back to the NFL football season, I felt like just a normal person sitting down watching football every Sunday. So it's going to be interesting to see, but we'll get to so much more. We're just getting started here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Right after this, we will continue with Alex Flum of WDVM right here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. I'd like to take a moment to talk about my friends over at Regroup Building Services, specializing in custom homes, remodels, additions, and so much more. If you're looking for a new place to call home or just need repairs on your current one, look no further, because Regroup Building Services has you covered. Just a couple months ago, Regroup Building Services came in and redid our entire kitchen, and boy, does it look great. I cannot recommend them enough. So if you're looking for anything to be done, make sure you check them out at www.regroupbuildingservices.com. Once again, that's www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. We're back on the Kirby on Sports podcast, anything and everything March Madness. Now joined by familiar friend to the podcast, Alex Flum of WDVM. He has a lot of work that needs to be done with the NCAA tournament, as he has some teams that is in his market that he will be covering. We will get to that and so much more. Alex, how are you, sir? Good to hear from you.
I'm doing good and great to be on here today again. I understand I'm not the first person to come on a second time, but from what I hear, I'm one of the early second-time guests on the podcast, and I'm honored to be in that group.
Well, greatly appreciate you coming on, Alex. So, a lot to get to here, NCAA tournament-wise. I know you cover a few teams in that group. Maryland, obviously. Georgetown, you're sort of watching them as well. So we'll get to them and so much more. But Alex, my first question, the tournament as a whole, I was discussing this in my last segment about my thoughts on what the NCAA tournament would potentially do if something were to happen COVID-wise, in terms of somebody testing positive for COVID, so on and so forth. So do you know, based on your sources or your information, how the tournament setup is going to be like based on this pandemic, how it's all going to play out? Is there anything different than a normal, regular, non-pandemic situation going on? What can you tell us about that first and foremost?
Well, what I can tell you is that this year is going to be unlike any other year you've ever seen. A lot of the years in different regions of the bracket, you have, different teams, go into one city. Like you have a bunch of teams playing in DC, or you have a bunch of teams playing in Spokane, Washington. It's always something different. But this year, everyone, the entire tournament, for the men's tournament, they're in Indianapolis. For the women's tournament, they're in San Antonio. And I know they're playing in different areas. Like I think Maryland's playing at Purdue's arena, and then some teams are playing, at Lucas Oil Stadium, and then, a bunch of different places there. So they're spreading them out. But people got to be really careful. They're quarantined in their own hotel rooms. I know that Maryland put out that they had kind of like a little welcome to the bubble thing, where they had like deodorants and little NCAA tournament memorabilia and things like that for them to have. But this year, the biggest difference this year is like, everybody there has to be careful, because, if one team gets it, it has the potential to derail the entire tournament. And, we have to hope that doesn't happen. I don't know what the regulations and situations are in Indiana, but you have to wonder for the women's tournament, it's in Texas, and Texas just opened up their whole state to full capacity for businesses and, removed the mask mandate. So, you have to worry, in the women's tournament, I think they're going to have to be extra careful, but, let's have our fingers crossed that, the fact that they're all going to be isolated and together, and there's going to be a lot of testing. I'm sure there's a lot of planning that's gone into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, planning for something like this is probably beyond what my thought process would be on this matter. But I mean, looking into this, do you think it's a situation between the teams and the NCAA where it's like you're either practicing, playing a game, or you're in your hotel room alone waiting for the next game, or so on and so forth?
I'm sure that's the case. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with the rules are, but I'd have to imagine if you remember with the NBA bubble, I forget who it was. I feel like it was like Lou Williams or something. Somebody was going to get chicken wings or going to a club or something, like this NCAA. I don't know if it was Lou Williams. I don't want to peg it on him if it wasn't him. It's just the first person that pops to my head when I'm trying to remember who it was. But I mean, with the NCAA tournament, it's like if a player goes to, a store or a restaurant or somewhere, like breaks off, goes to a bar or something, especially if they don't have a mask on when they're there, I'm sure they're going to be in huge trouble. I mean, I would imagine they'd get suspended in some way, or who knows if the teams would even get in trouble, but because they have to realize that, if Illinois is playing Oklahoma State and a player in Illinois does something stupid and gets COVID, and then they play Oklahoma State, you put Oklahoma State at risk. Let's say Oklahoma State wins, goes to the next round, team they play is at risk. There's also teams that are in the same arenas. It's like a domino effect. Also at the same time, you don't just get COVID if you do something stupid. Sometimes you could be as careful as possible and someone can get COVID. So that's why they really, really need to be, on their guard and be extra careful. And then this, the crazy thing, you hear from so many coaches, the interview, no matter the sport, that a lot of coaches, especially a lot of the Maryland coaches, I've heard say this, a lot of college coaches have said, this year we're facing two opponents, the opponent on the field and COVID. And, as funny as it is to hear that, it's true. It's the exact case, because, you're going to the NCAA tournament. You have to beat the teams that you're playing, but you have to beat COVID. You have to be ready to play. Like UVA, they had a COVID outbreak on their team. They're all quarantined. They're not going to get to practice till the day before the tournament. That's going to affect them in a big way. They're playing Ohio. That's a huge advantage for Ohio. So, you look at things like that, and it's like, when you get to the NCAA tournament, you got to be as careful as possible, or because you could be the best team in the nation. Illinois could get God forbid anyone does, but Illinois could have a COVID outbreak. Gonzaga could have a COVID outbreak. Boom, they're done. They probably would not be able to play a couple games. Who knows what tournament they could have to leave the tournament. So it's going to be about how you play on the court, but it's going to be about what you do off the court. And that's going to be a huge thing. And that's the theme for any sport this year at any level too.
Yeah, I'm looking at this bracket here, and like the dates just look like there's not really that much padding for if something like this happens, God forbid.
Right.
And you have a COVID case, and it doesn't look like there's much padding for any room for error. So, I mean, if that's the case, I would only assume they get told to leave, or this whole tournament gets derailed. But I mean, it sucks that we've gotten to a point where we have to talk about the what ifs in this situation. And it's just like, it's just crazy to think that, yes, we're us fans watching on TV, that we're going to have something to do, follow a bracket, which we did not get the opportunity to do last year. Right. And this year, like you said, the opponent on the court in COVID. And I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think like they're would, like, worst case, they would reschedule any of these games, or do you think it's just game over?
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. First off, I think if it does happen, my guess is it would probably just from hearing what a bunch of different health officials have said at different levels and what's happened, if one guy gets it and it's shown that there wasn't close contact with anyone else, let's say it's like a bench warmer on Maryland and they play Connecticut and the bench warmer didn't take their mask off the whole time, there's a possibility that everyone on Maryland could not get it and everyone on UConn would not get it. And let's say UConn beats Maryland, they go to the next round, then they could probably proceed as normal. So I think it's really going to be an instance by instance basis if I had to guess. And I think if it happens in the first round, if a team has a huge outbreak in the first round, I think they're done. And I think a replacement team comes in. But if, it happens in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 or the Final Four, I think you're going to see them probably postponing things if they have to, because I think once you get that far, you have the big teams in there. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. It'd be crazy if, what do you do? Do you do what the conference tournaments were doing and they're going to have to decide, and I'm sure they have them in place. We'd have to look into it, but are they going to say, if the 3 seed is playing the 2 seed and the 3 seed can't play, does the 2 seed just move on by default, or does the 6 seed that lost to the 3 seed, are they going to get to play the 2 seed now? Because then you're letting a team that lost already still play. So I don't know what the heck they're going to do, but let's just hope it doesn't happen, because that'd be tough. But at the same time, you have to remember, these are people there. It's like you were saying, Josh, this isn't just we're watching it and we care about the tournament. We want the games must go on in fans' minds, but it's first and foremost, I hope the NCAA puts players first, because this is real world. This is a big thing to I'm sure it's cool for them to be there, but they're stuck there for a month or as long as it needs to be. And but these guys are D1 athletes. They've been dreaming of this since they were kids. I'm sure they're probably just excited to be there and will do whatever it takes to play. So,
well, just a lot of hypotheticals that are unknown that we're just going to have to see as it plays out. But hopefully, no COVID. It will be COVID free, and we're going to have a very great tournament. So. Let's get right into it, Alex. I mean, the tournament's finally here. Something to look
waiting 2 years, right?
2 years. It's crazy. Before we dive into West, South, East, Midwest, first and foremost, no Duke and no Kentucky.
Hey, as a Maryland grad and somebody who grew up a Maryland fan, no Duke is 2 beautiful words. I you know what? I'm happy to not see Duke in the tournament for once. But I will say, I know they're going through a COVID thing, so I hope everyone's okay. And I'm not happy about that, but I'm happy that Duke had a down season in terms of their play on the court, because without the COVID thing, they weren't as good this year. But that really kind of did derail them, and we probably, I'm sure, would have seen Duke in the tournament this year. I mean, Kentucky was a tough year for them, dealing with stuff too. And we almost didn't see UNC and Kansas in the tournament. Well, Kansas really got it together in their 3 seed, but UNC, they were struggling. There was a moment we didn't know if they were making it either. So this was really a down year for a lot of the big storied programs. So I don't know for sure. But if I had to guess, what happened with that is you look at those programs, they get a lot of one and done guys coming in. They get a lot of guys that are going pro. And with everything going on with COVID, maybe those people aren't willing to risk it as much as the other guys are. So, guys that know hey, I'm going to make the NBA even if I play a game or not, So that I think affected them too. I mean, Duke had one of the really good players opted out of most of the season. And they're within their right to do that too, especially because in a lot of those instances, those players that opt out, they're just protecting their health, and you can't blame them for that.
Yeah, but Kentucky, such a storied franchise, and it's man, they're not even in. But I think going back to what you said, a lot of down years, especially in the ACC. I mean, I'm not sure how much of the ACC you had a chance to watch this past season, but a lot of like Virginia Tech, they're looking better than they have. I mean, with in terms of the regular season, obviously defeating Virginia, defeating these big teams
Well,
they were projected not to beat, and so on and so forth.
right. Well, Tech, they were dealing with COVID, a COVID outbreak of their
Twice.
own. Yeah, they missed a lot of games, and I think they're a better team than their seeding. I just wonder if they're going to be able to step up and come in. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, the ACC, this is one of the weaker years we've seen from the ACC, and the Big Ten is all hyped up, better year too. But I really think it's all relative. And, you know, at the end of the day, these are all D1 college basketball programs. They all have talent, and all these, especially the major conferences, and a lot of the mid-major conferences this year too. They've had some great seasons in the mid-majors. So, I mean, I think it'll all even out when we get in the tournament. But I do like what we've seen from the Big 12, though, too, and the SEC. It's nice to see talent in the Big 12 and the SEC in addition to the ACC and the Big 10. It's really, you know, you talk a lot about the mid-majors getting more talent, but I think the power conferences have had more talent spread out as well, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right in. We'll touch briefly on the first four. I want to know, is there ever a time here, let me rephrase this. Is there ever like what are the odds here that a first four team moves on past the first round of the playoffs? Have you ever seen that happen? Because I don't believe I've ever seen that.
I think it has happened a few times. I think I want to say Syracuse, when they made their run, you know, teams have done it. There's been, I have to think of who else, but a number of teams that have been in the first four. In fact, last year was the first year ever that they've had these first four play-in matchups. You know, when they expanded the field to 68. That or not last year, 2019. 2019 was the first year that none of the teams made it past that round of 64. And I think it was Maryland played, Belmont. And if Maryland lost, Belmont would have made it because Belmont was from the first four. So it's just, so I don't see one of those teams making it through. I think UCLA or Michigan State could beat BYU, but I think BYU is really good. So I don't think BYU is going to lose. But, you know, it's March. Anything could happen. And then between Drake and Wichita State, like I forget who are they even playing? They're playing USC. USC's good. I don't think they're going to be USC. You know, and then you have all the 16 seed teams. I don't think they're going to do anything. I mean, shout out to Mount St. Mary's, though.
You cover Mount St. Mary's. I was just about to say that.
Have to give the credit to I dropped my pen here, wherever it went. My coworker Grace Grill has done phenomenal coverage of Mount St. Mary's.
For men's and women's, if I'm correct.
And both of those teams made the tournament. The women are playing Maryland in the first round. Yeah, that's not going to be fun for them. But the men's team, they're a 16 seed. I forget which team they play if they advance. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to see any of the 16 seeds winning this year. But Hartford-Baylor could be an interesting game.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Maybe Baylor will win by 20, but, you know.
Yeah, Mount St. Mary's, if they win, they would face off against Michigan.
Okay, yeah, that'd be a tough game. But Michigan's slowing down a bit.
So where's Mount St. Mary's from? I know WDVM covers them. Where are they located?
Emmitsburg, Maryland.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's not too far from Hagerstown.
I see. Okay. So the Cinderella teams, let's touch on some other Cinderella teams. In my opinion, obviously, that are in this tournament field, not in the first four. Obviously, what's the team I was looking for? Loyola Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, their storied run to the Final Four or whatever. Like, I mean, a year off from basketball, my mind's all rusty with all this. But Loyola Chicago, their fan base looks just as strong, and I believe Sister Mary, whatever.
Sister Jean, I think.
Jean, yeah. Apparently, she's going to be at the tournament. So
That's what I saw that today too. 101 years old. Isn't that incredible? I hope she's careful too. But she's fully vaccinated, is what I saw. The headline I believe I saw was "Fully Vaccinated Sister Jean."
Wow.
They're
Well,
good. It's good.
I mean, do you think this team has what it takes to make another storied run like this?
I do. I think they do. Unfortunately for them, they got placed in the toughest region in this entire tournament, one of the toughest regions I've ever seen in an NCAA tournament bracket. So that's not going to be easy. But right now, in my preliminary bracket filling out, my gut, I haven't finished yet. But I'm going to have to do it closer to the games. But I have them in the Final Four. They have a lot of. They have some of the guys that were there that last run. Cameron Krutwig, I think is how to pronounce it. Krutwig, I forgot to say it. He's a big guy, and they kind of run their team through him. And you know, in stats, efficiency, and KenPom, if you look at it, Loyola is the #1 defensive team in the nation, the most efficient defense in the nation, and that's going to carry them far. I mean, the tough thing for them is they play. First of all, Georgia Tech is one of the hardest 8-9 seeds you could face. They're playing well. They got the ACC Player of the Year, I think. And then second round, Illinois. I mean, we're talking Illinois, one of the hottest teams in the nation right now, who, you know, from the Big Ten. And then if you get through Illinois, then you probably have to play Oklahoma State and Cade Cunningham, who's an NBA prospect. And then you either play West Virginia, who is a gritty team, Houston, who is one of the most efficient, consistent teams in the country, and San Diego State even has a chance to, you know, get in there, and they're a very good team. So, I mean, if you even make it through all that, then you play Baylor, probably Arkansas, Ohio State, whoever comes out of that, Purdue, you know. I mean, that's a really hard run for Loyola. So, you know, I have them in my Final Four right now. I might change it, but I mean, that is just, that region is like a bloodbath. It's hot. That's a tough region.
It really is. Like you said,
a lot of good teams in there.
Like you said, Illinois, West Virginia, some teams I'm looking at, Houston, and the Georgia Tech, like you said, that is probably one of the tightest matchups you can get, in my opinion.
I think Loyola will beat Georgia Tech. I think they'll be able to defend them well.
Yeah, but because with Georgia Tech, as you know, they subbed in for Virginia, and they ended up winning the ACC championship.
Right. Well, yeah, and Georgia Tech, I think, is a team that really came into their own late in the season. You know, they were talking about them not making the tournament. So, you know, the crazy thing is, I think you have 6 or 7 teams that could reasonably make the Final Four out of there. And then that's why I'm having such a hard time putting Illinois, because, you know, Illinois struggled at the beginning of the year, and they're definitely not the same team they were then. They lost to Maryland at one point, but they've really came on late of late. But I don't know. That's a hard region. So right now I have Loyola, but I'm going back and forth between Oklahoma State and Illinois. I mean, we didn't even mention Syracuse is in there. Syracuse is a strong 11 seed that can always make a run.
I feel like they can make a run as well.
Oklahoma State, they play Liberty, and Liberty is a good team that can do just about everything, but they're not beating Oklahoma State, I don't think.
Well, yeah, you know, bracketology, I filled out like 3 or 4 brackets, and in some I picked Oklahoma State, but I mean, at some point the stats just have to get thrown out the window, and because anything can happen. This is what is so great about March Madness in the bracket, because the stats are in front of you, and you have all this information and analysis to make your pick right. But the thing about March Madness, literally anything can happen.
Right. And I mean, that goes for all sports, but like, I feel like it's magnified. It's the biggest stage in basketball, maybe the biggest stage in sports. along with the Super Bowl and a World Cup, other things like that. But it's like March Madness is fun, and it's I think you have to be crazy not to love it.
Yeah, I think Liberty though, they have been a strong basketball program in years past.
Right.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if a team were to upset like Liberty beating Oklahoma State, I feel like that could be just a one round, very hyped up, and then they get blown out because I've seen that.
I don't know. I'll tell you this: if Liberty does somehow get through Oklahoma State, I think Tennessee is a sleeping giant. I think Oregon State might not be able to beat Liberty. So if Liberty somehow gets past Oklahoma State, I think you'll see them in the Sweet 16. But I don't think they're going to win.
So I have another Cinderella.
Okay.
I've been debating this all week, pretty much. This matchup, Villanova versus Winthrop.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I saw Villanova a couple times. Their performance against Georgetown's red hot team, defeating Villanova, that was considered an upset. I wouldn't be surprised if 23-1 Winthrop beats Villanova.
Well, I think the toughest thing about this is Colin Gillespie is, I think he's out for the season, and he is Villanova's best player. And the thing you see with these teams with Villanova is, if they either end out going deep or they're gone early. You never see it in the middle. And this is not a team that's going deep. I don't have a lot of confidence in this Villanova team. I do have Winthrop beating them. I don't have a ton of confidence in Winthrop. I think they're good. I think they've got some talent, and they can shoot, I think, too. But yeah, I don't see them getting super far. But I do think they'll beat Villanova, and I did think about having them beat Purdue in the second round, but I do think Purdue has a nice, easy draw for them, and I think Purdue's just good enough to beat Winthrop. Winthrop. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, I think Purdue, they have another good shot of making it far, and I'll reveal towards the end our official Final Four picks, because I have a few filled out, but a few brackets, but not all the way for this one. But I think Purdue is another team to look out for coming out of the south side of the bracket. Let's look here. How about Abilene Christian? Could we see them beating Texas? I say no.
I have a good friend of mine from Maryland. He's a couple years younger than me. Went to school there too. His name's Noah Gross, and he is a sports anchor in Abilene, Texas, and he covers Abilene Christian University. And I asked him, I said, "Are they going to win?" And he's my official source on them. So he says it'll be a close game and they'll probably cover, but Texas is going to win that game. So I'm going. He says ACU is a good team, but he doesn't think they're making it past that first round. So I'm listening to him.
UNC Greensboro staying in the East against Florida State. I say no.
Florida State's a good team. I think Florida State should have won the ACC. So no.
Yeah, they've been looking pretty good. I'm surprised they gave them the 4 seed.
I know Florida State's gonna win that game. I'd be stunned. I'd be so stunned.
Well, yeah, I'll give you one. I'm very surprised Georgetown is ranked number 12 against Colorado. I think Georgetown moves on 1 or 2 rounds.
I really want to pick Georgetown. Patrick Ewing has done a fantastic job. If you watched them earlier in the season, they really actually did keep things close. They showed up to play. They came out a little slow early in the year, but they got things going eventually. It was weirdly the same time the Wizards got things going. I think your good friend of the podcast too, Ben Standing, I think pointed that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think Georgetown is going to beat Colorado. I think Georgetown could have beaten a team like Villanova. Well, they're not going to play Villanova, but I think I think Georgetown, if somehow they played Purdue, I think Georgetown could have beaten Purdue. I think Georgetown could have beat Tennessee. I think Georgetown could have beaten UVA. I think Georgetown would have beaten a lot of other teams that they would have faced as in that 11, 12, 13 range, whatever. But I think Colorado is a really good balanced team with a lot of talent. So I could even see Colorado making the Elite Eight, Final Four, maybe. So I think Georgetown just kind of didn't luck out with their draw, but they lucked out with the fact that they earned it. Don't get me wrong, but they're in the NCAA tournament. I think they're grateful to be there. They're playing with house money, whether they win or they lose.
Absolutely. St. Bonaventure against LSU. I mean, sort of a Cinderella St. Bonaventure. I would go to say, I think LSU wins.
LSU, we are not agreeing today, Josh. LSU's got talent, but I think St. Bonaventure.
Really?
They have one of the best coaches there is. They are a trendy upset pick. I think they win that game, and I think they're going to give Michigan a run for their money too. I don't think they're going to win.
Michigan. Wow.
Yeah, I have St. Bonaventure advancing one round.
The 16 Mount St. Mary's against Texas Southern, I think Michigan moves on easily handed. Let's talk Grand Canyon against Iowa. Are we going to disagree or agree on this one?
I don't know where you're going with it.
I'm picking Iowa.
Okay, I think we're going to agree. I mean, I don't know a lot about Grand Canyon. I do think I could see that game being close-ish. Close-ish meaning Iowa wins by 10 or 15 points. But no, I don't think Iowa loses.
Let's see. I think that's about all the Cinderella teams I picked out on this list. Is there any Cinderella team that I did not talk about that you had talking about? Do you have any others?
I got a few. First off, I'll start with my crazy pick of the year. Every year I like to make a pick where I say is my crazy pick of the year, where it's like a 1 to 3 seed losing. A few years back, I think I picked, it was 2014, Duke played Mercer. And I said Mercer was going to win, and Mercer won. I was in Israel when it happened too, watching it on my phone.
Really?
So every once in a while I get those right. Of course, I can't remember the ones I got wrong to tell you because I've kind of blocked those out of my memory. But this year, my crazy upset is Ohio State losing to Oral Roberts. And I almost laugh when I say it because it's crazy. But Ohio State is not the best defensive team. Out of all the teams at the top of the tournament, efficient-wise, if you look at KenPom, they're ranked 79th in efficiency in the country for defense. That's not great. They got a great offense, awesome offense, great scorers. But their defensive efficiency is not great. In the Big Ten, I think they were bottom 2, bottom 3 in defending the 3. Oral Roberts is either the 7th or 8th. I think they're 8th in the country in three-point shooting percentage. They don't shoot a ton of threes, but they shoot them efficiently. I think they're going to take advantage of that. I think they're going to shoot more threes than we usually see from Oral Roberts. And, you look at earlier the season, I'll pull it up here. I saw they played Arkansas tough earlier in the season. Let me pull this up here for you. They played Arkansas tough. They lost to Oklahoma State by 5. They lost to Oklahoma, Missouri, Wichita State. They had tight games, against some of these teams. But so it's not going to be easy. But my upset, my crazy upset pick of the year is Oral Roberts. Might not happen. I'm probably crazy saying it, but I like to do one of those every year. So that's what I'm going with there. I like VCU. I think VCU does everything. I think they defend. They take care of the ball. They can score pretty well, better than you think. They're a very well-rounded team. I think they're going to win in the first round. Heck, I'm honestly putting them to beat Iowa too. I'm back and forth on that one, though. I might switch it up. But VCU, I think, is the Cinderella. If they count, San Diego State's a 6th seed. I mean, if they weren't in that tough region, they'd have a better shot of advancing. I don't think they will. I think that just about covers it. One thing I do want to say, I see a lot of people having Ohio go deep in this tournament. And if UVA is without half their team, Ohio will maybe win that game. But if UVA has their full team there, I think they're going to win. UVA's had games canceled and postponed because of COVID throughout the season at least 3 times. And every time they came back, they didn't miss a beat. You know, Tony Bennett is one of the best coaches in the country. And I don't think UVA is losing that game. If they are missing all their key players, give it to Ohio, and then I could see Ohio going further. But especially because Creighton's there, and I think Creighton doesn't have the strongest chance of advancing. But yeah, I think Ohio won't be a Cinderella.
We're talking with Alex Flum of WDVM here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. If you're just tuning in, discussing anything and everything NCAA in March Madness. So I want to go back to the VCU one because I used to really follow VCU very closely because my brother went to VCU, and their Havoc defense was great. They had a great head coach in Shaka Smart, who ended up leaving. Now. He's in Texas now, but I've seen some VCU, but it looks like their defense is still looking strong and everything. I know it was either the last tournament or the tournament before last. VCU was in the first round and got knocked out in the first round. And I was like, yeah, I mean, their defense just didn't look good back then, but their defense looks very great right now. And I mean, I've been going back and forth between Oregon or VCU. I have one each picked in 2 of my brackets. So I'm looking forward to that matchup.
I like Oregon, but I think VCU, I just think they're a strong team. And they play defense really well, like you said, and they play offense good enough. I mean, Mike Rhodes, their coach, he was at VCU under Shaka Smart as I think like associate head coach or something. And, you know, Shaka Smart had a great defense then too, like you were talking about. And, you know, Rhodes came back as a head coach, and I think they're still in pretty good shape, kind of picked up right where they left off. So, I think VCU could seriously make a Cinderella run again.
It just goes to show Shaka Smart going to Texas, what he's been doing for that program as well.
Oh, yeah. Texas, they're a Final Four contender too. So, but yes. they got not the easiest road.
Absolutely. So let's move on. Let's talk about the local teams from the DMV. We'll discuss the teams you cover, obviously, but first and foremost, I want to touch on Virginia Tech. Okay. I feel like with their COVID outbreaks, they're facing Florida. Yes, they're facing Florida. Florida's been looking decent over the past couple of weeks and before the championship week started and whatnot. But Virginia Tech with 2 COVID outbreaks, I mean, I've been debating this in my head because obviously I follow Virginia Tech, but my opinion on this, I think Virginia Tech gets knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going back and forth. Right now, I have Florida going to the Sweet 16. So I think whoever wins that game, whether it's Oral Roberts or Ohio State, I could really see them beating Ohio State. But honestly, maybe not. Who knows? But yeah, I'm really torn on that game because I think if it wasn't COVID, if you didn't have that extra factor, I think Virginia Tech wins this game. I think they're honestly probably a better team than Florida, maybe right there on equal par. But yeah, I'm really torn. I think this is one of the top 2 or 3 hardest games to pick in the whole first round.
We touched on Liberty a little bit, but I mean, once again, they've been looking strong over the past couple of years, but they're facing Oklahoma State. That's got to be one of the toughest challenges for the teams in Virginia. I think that's one of the toughest ones to look for, Liberty versus Oklahoma State. Once again, do you think there's any chance Liberty pulls it off?
I think there's a chance. I don't think it happens. Cade Cunningham. That's the 2 words you need to know.
Cade Cunningham. He's been looking phenomenal. So it's going to be an interesting game there. West Virginia. Bob Huggins, their head coach. You know, West Virginia has had history of playing great basketball. How far do we think West Virginia might get, because I've had them in a couple brackets working my bracket magic, hopefully creating the perfect bracket. And I have them going to at least the Elite Eight, Sweet 16 or Elite Eight in my bracket.
Yeah, I think they'll make the Sweet 16. I could see San Diego State maybe giving them a run for their money, but West Virginia is a good team. Like they get it done. They especially in the paint. Like they're gonna bully some teams, and I feel bad for Morehead State. I think they're gonna win that one easily. But yeah, I mean the thing that's going for West Virginia is they're in that really hard bracket, but in that hard region, but they're in the easier part of it. So if they get through that, and then you're gonna beat up Illinois or Oklahoma State or Loyola team, if they get to that Elite Eight, or getting through Houston is probably going to be the toughest challenge for them, because West Virginia, they've had a really, really hard schedule this year. I mean, they had to play Baylor, Gonzaga, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Florida. They lost a lot of those games. It seems like they play up to their competition, but then they're not winning in the end. So I think that's going to hurt them. So I don't see them going past Sweet 16, Elite Eight, but I think they're going to definitely make some sort of a run.
So let me get your thoughts on this. What side of the bracket do you think is the most challenging this year? In which side of the bracket do you think is the most easiest this year?
Do you mean which of the four, or which of
the four?
The four. Well, definitely the Midwest with Illinois is the hardest by far. Easiest, I think Gonzaga's bracket is the easiest.
Yeah.
I just think Iowa's a 2 seed, but I think they're beatable. I think Kansas is very beatable. I think UVA with their COVID situation, that's something to look at. Creighton is really struggling. Missouri is a pesky team. They've been struggling more. USC with their point guard Mobley, they've got some talent. But yeah, I don't see a single team on there that I think can beat Gonzaga, and it's a shame that's the easiest one, because Gonzaga is going to breeze through that thing.
All right. Well, now it's time to talk about the teams you cover, and I'm gonna basically give the floor to you on this, Alex. But the number 10 Maryland Terrapins, I have them going at least around deep. I think Maryland has an opportunity. I know they've had some ups and downs this season, but I think they can handle UConn pretty well. But you cover the team the most. I want to get your thoughts on Maryland and the NCAA tournament for them.
Yeah, I think it's a really hard game to pick. I think it's James Boudite. I don't know how to say his name, but the UConn, he's their leading scorer, and he was hurt, and he came back, and ever since he came back, he's been really good, and they've been really good. So it's going to be about stopping him, and they have Daryl Morcell as the Big Ten leading scorer, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. So I think it's going to be tough to stop him, but I think Morcell will be up to the challenge. I'm really torn on this game. I think it's right there with Tech and Florida, and a hard game to pick. I don't have Maryland winning the game, but I could absolutely see them winning. I don't think they could beat Alabama in the second round, but I think they have a shot to win. And yeah, it's really been an up and down season for them, because some games they come out and they look like this great team that can beat a top 25 team, and lots of talent. And then sometimes they come out and they just fall flat. So some nights you just don't know which Maryland team you're going to see. I think they do play up to their competition, though. So I'll tell you this, I think no matter what, we're going to see a close game. I think it's going to come down to the last few minutes. I don't think they're going to come out and get blown out.
And once again, just touching on it briefly, Maryland is in the men's and women's bracket this year, correct? Can you touch on how the women's team has been doing too?
Yeah, well, they are really good. They're a 2 seed. They should be a 1 seed, in my opinion. They lost all 5 of their starters from last season. This year they came back, totally new look team, and they totally dominated. I think it's 12 or I think it's 13 games in a row they've won, something like that. And they won the Big Ten tournament, won the Big Ten regular season. They're not just beating teams, they're blowing out these teams, with the exception of one game against Nebraska. They've won by double digits in every game. They had one game they won by 12. All the other games they won by at least like 22 or 23 points. I mean, they're just blowing people out. So I think they're going to make the Final Four. I have a bet with another media member. I won't say who. that I said I don't want to throw them under the bus. They are convinced Maryland's not making the Final Four. I'm convinced they are. So we have a bet on lunch for that. I won't reveal who, but I think they're going to the Final Four. They're really good. They have Ashley Owusu is one of their best players, if not their best. Katie Benson, Chloe Bibby, Diamond Miller, Angel Reese, and then that's just some of them. I mean, there's just endless talent on that team. Can they beat the UConns and the South Carolinas of the world? We'll see. I think South Carolina they might have to go through, but I do think they're going to make the Final Four.
Absolutely. Great stuff there. And Georgetown, last but not least, out of DC. Yeah, once again, I think I have a feeling they might have a chance to go 1 or 2 deep, but
right.
I mean, like you said, we weren't really agreeing that you thought Colorado would win, but leading up to this, Georgetown has been looking very great. As you said, Patrick Ewing, a great head coach for Georgetown. Do you have any other thoughts about Georgetown's season, and do you give Georgetown any chance, a smidge of an opportunity for them to win this game?
I think they have a chance. They're 12 seed. You never know. Colorado has a bad day, bad night. I don't know what time of day the game is offhand, but Georgetown has a chance. We'll see what happens. But I will say it's great to see a Georgetown team in the tournament with a lot of buzz. I remember growing up here in the DC area, there's always a lot of buzz around Georgetown. People always talk about those teams. You remember even when they had Roy Hibbert, Greg Monroe, even a little bit into when Otto Porter was there. Those teams, a lot of time they underperformed in the tournament, but those teams were always fun to watch, and especially back Allen Iverson, a little bit before our time, Josh. But college-wise. But no, I'd love to see Georgetown good, and I think Patrick Ewing got that program going in the right direction.
So one team we neglected to talk about, and I have a pretty good reason why, is 26-0 Gonzaga. Gonzaga is, I mean, in my opinion, it's hard to write this team off. Gonzaga has, looking at the stats, they're perfect. 26-0, undefeated. It's going to be very, very hard to write this Gonzaga team off in one of the easiest sides of the bracket in this tournament.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people say that they haven't played anyone, but, I don't think that's true. They beat Iowa, they beat Kansas, they beat UVA, they beat BYU 3 times, and BYU is a good team, and they gave them a challenge that last time. They beat West Virginia. So you can't use that argument saying Gonzaga hasn't beaten anyone, because they've beaten all these good teams, and they've beaten them convincingly for the most part. They were supposed to play Baylor, but that game got postponed and I think eventually canceled because of COVID, and I think they would have won that game too. And the thing is, if you were to make a team of the best 12 players in the country, even the best 10 players in the country, and you're putting a team together, you're going to take at least 2 from Gonzaga, probably 3. I really like Jalen Suggs. I think he's got a lot of great potential too, and that whole team is good. And Mark Few knows what he's doing, and I think this is going to be the year that they get it done, and they're going to be the one that goes undefeated and doesn't lose a single game. Put that on top that they have the easiest region, so it's a benefit when you play some good teams to improve your schedule. But you have a lighter schedule than other teams. They went through, they didn't have to go through as much of a bruising schedule, they're ready for the tournament, and they're going to have an easy run through there. And I think this is their year. I mean, whoever comes out of that one with Michigan and Alabama and all those teams down there, Texas, even BYU, I think they can beat whoever comes out of there. And then I think Illinois could beat them maybe if Illinois makes the final, but I don't see many other teams on that side of the bracket that have a shot at beating them. I don't even think Baylor would beat them.
Once again, we're joined by Alex Flum of WDVM, breaking down anything and everything March Madness related. When we return, Alex and I will bring you our final 4 picks. Stay tuned. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram, or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. I'm Josh Kirby. You're back with us. Anything and everything March Madness, the madness has begun. Once again, joined by Alex Flum, covering Maryland, some Georgetown, and a bunch of other sports over at WDVM. So make sure you check him out at Alex Flum TV on Twitter. So Alex, it's finally time. We have our final 4 picks. I will let you go first with your final 4 picks.
Okay. Well, we were just talking about it. Gonzaga. That was easy. There's no chance they're not making it there. Well, there's a chance, but I think it'll happen. That next region, torn between a few different teams, but I'm going to go with Michigan. They look like they're missing a beat a little bit, slowing down a little bit, but I think they're going to be able to make it through there. Alabama and Texas, those are kind of dark horses there, but I like Michigan out of there. Top right, I think it's the South is what it is. Arkansas, I think they're a well-rounded team. I think people are not talking about them. I think they're a strong team that's a little under the radar. They can score the basketball. They got a lot of different guys. They have depth. If they get into foul trouble in a game, they would be maybe okay. Or they could rebound too. So, I think they're going to be able to beat Baylor out of there. So I'm going Arkansas. And, I like to spice things up. And like I said earlier, I could see Illinois there. I could see Oklahoma State there. But just for the sake of this official pick, and we're talking 9:42 p.m., whatever day of the week this is. I don't know. Lose track sometimes. Tuesday. 9:42 p.m. Tuesday, Loyola is in the Final Four. That could be different by the games. I might switch it to Illinois or Oklahoma State, but for now, I'm going with Loyola. Sister Jean is going to be cutting down the nets for the South region when it's or whatever. What is it? Midwest region when it's all said and done. Midwest region.
It's funny because WDVM TV has a bracket challenge with you all. So I just messed around, created an account, and hopefully I'll score more points than Alex Flum.
Yeah, put that out there. Everybody should sign up, and I'm sure you won't have trouble.
WDVM TV.
We'll see. We're technically the expert pickers.
Absolutely. So,
but you got to know with the tournament, nobody knows.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
That's what makes it so much fun. You
could put something in front of a dog and tell them to pick the games, and they're probably going to do better than Jay Billis or something. It's like,
man, a dog.
Not to single out Jay Billis, but it's to say somebody who doesn't know anything about basketball could have a better bracket than experts. It happens every year because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. Like all the experts picked Pittsburgh to beat Washington.
Right.
I know that's different, but still. Let me get to my final four picks. Out of the West, I have Gonzaga. Once again, Gonzaga, they are hard to count against. I mean, I even myself, it's been an easy decision, and I don't think there's any sort of scenario that will place Gonzaga out of this tournament going home crying themselves to sleep. I mean, I don't know if they do that, but still.
What was it? Adam Morrison back in the day. Was that who was crying from Gonzaga way back? Do you remember that?
I don't recall, to be honest. I'm not going to say I do, but I do.
All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go.
Yeah. So Michigan out of the East, I have Michigan. I just think Michigan has what it takes. They've been looking pretty good as well. The South and the Midwest, I have two slightly different picks that you might not think are of the ordinary, because you have to account that this is March Madness and anything can happen. So for the South, I have Purdue in the Final Four. In the Midwest, I have Tennessee. And I mean, yeah, I've been doing these brackets for about a night and a half, just studying, looking at notes, stats and stuff. But there comes a point where you have to throw the stats out the window. And
right. So I want to know, Josh, what do you like about Purdue and Tennessee? Because I like Purdue just because of an easy draw to make the Sweet 16, but Tennessee, I have them losing in the second round to Oklahoma State.
Well, yeah, Tennessee, I've seen some of their highlights and stuff, and I feel like they could be a sleeper. I mean,
they have talent. They have young talent.
Yeah, I feel like they could be a sleeper. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. They got beat by Oklahoma State, but still, I feel like based on what I've seen, they could potentially be a sleeper. But once again, this is March Madness. Anything can happen.
Right. You never know.
Purdue, I'm going to piggyback off what you said. They have an easy draw. And I feel like that gives them a better opportunity to make it to the Final Four than if they had not so great of a draw, like facing number one Baylor or North Carolina or Florida, maybe. But I mean, just luck of the draw there, and that's why. But I mean, the West and the East for us, I mean, it was pretty much a no-brainer. But the South and the Midwest are more, in my mind, sort of like anything can happen. I mean, not that it can't happen in the West and the East, but anything can essentially happen.
Oh yeah, I agree with you for sure about the Midwest. I've never seen a bracket harder to pick, ever. Section of the bracket. Like, I don't know what to do. But I got Loyola there for now because, I'm ready for the madness. Let it be Loyola,
I'm ready for the madness too. Once again, Alex Flum of WDVM joining us on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Alex, before we let you go, tell tell everybody where they can find you and your wonderful work for WDVM.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Alex Flum TV on Twitter, at Alex Flum TV. On Facebook, you can find me at my Facebook page, just Alex Flum WDVM. You can stick with localdvm.com, and we got a bunch of different coverage. If you live in Montgomery County, we're ramping up our high school sports coverage, everything going on there. And I got everything University of Maryland for you. We're all on top of that too. So and from pros to locals, from down where you are, Josh, in Virginia, all the way to West Virginia and Hagerstown, Frederick, Maryland, DC, PG County, even too now. So we're all over the place, and then we got a great team there. So,
Alex, we really appreciate you coming on talking basketball. It was a lot of fun.
All right, well, Josh, it's always a pleasure, and I look forward to coming on for a record. Would it be a record third time?
I don't know, but
Am I in the official record books?
Until the next time you hear us, always remember to create greatness and find us on all streaming platforms. Check out our brand new website, www.kirbyonsports.com. This won't be shown, but Alex Flum's putting on the infamous JKS hat. So I appreciate the support there. But until you hear us next time, always remember to create greatness, and we will catch you next time. Peace out.